Hello, OESD elementary colleagues. This is John Flannery in the CNI office. I hope all of you had a relaxing break and things are going well as you head into the final stretch of the school year. I wanted to share changes that we're going to make heading into the 2015-2016 school year that are going to impact assessment in our district. And knowing that all of you are incredibly busy at this point, your building principals and I felt it might be best to create a quick screencast that would highlight these changes. And then next week, during common plannings, your reading specialist and principal will sit down with teams and share specific details and be able to answer questions that you may have. So if I'm sitting in a teacher position right now, I'd probably ask why the change or why the need for change. So I want people to understand, and most of you who have been in this district prior to 2012-13 do understand this. But as a recap, prior to the 2012-13 school year, all OESD elementary schools were using the F&P assessment as their formal universal screening tool to monitor progress for kids. And in order to become compliant with RTI guidelines and the SLD requirements, OESD implemented MAP, the Measure of Academic Progress Assessment, in 2012 as our official universal screening tool. We also added another data point to help qualify for students for intervention. And along the way, our 4K through second grade teachers in 2012 also had the responsibility from the state to administer PALS as part of our statewide effort to evaluate foundational literacy. As in the case with many Wisconsin, if all of our Wisconsin school districts, our OESD teachers have been asked to spend this ever-increasing amount of time assessing our kids. One of the things that we wanted to do in teaching and learning this fall was to really understand the impact that this assessment was having and the amount of time we were spending, our teachers were spending, gaining insights by delivering these assessments. So the audit that we created analyzed a couple of pieces. The first was time spent preparing students for all of our reading assessments, the time spent administering these assessments, time spent analyzing the assessments, and then how much time our school teams were using those. And so the first shot on the screen, you will see just a quick synopsis. This was a sheet that I had shared with principals and reading specialists. It just gives you an idea that what we recorded from those teachers at each grade level. So just for example, in first grade, depending on the teacher, we had anywhere between 385 minutes to 1,200 minutes of time spent in F&P, 240 to 960 minutes spent in PALS. So we're talking about, for one of our particular teachers, 36 hours that they were spending in the fall delivering assessment. So one of the things that we wanted to do, knowing that either these assessments are state mandated, they're necessary for RTI requirements, or provide really sound instructional decision-making ability for our teachers in the case of F&P and MAP and PALS, we wanted to really understand the correlation, and that's the work that Scott Peters did with us. So the second screen I want to show you is something that he shared with us. The work we asked him to do with Derek Kiger was to look at the correlation. And a question that usually has come up for us is, well, we get so much more information out of F&P, or we really like using MAP right now. We wanted to understand, was there correlation, and is there a way that we can reposition some of these assessments to recapture some instructional time? So this is the findings from our fall OESD assessment. Again, I am not going to pretend to be a psychometrician. I will tell you just in my ignorant understanding that a 1.0 is perfect. And so when we look at, we knew MAP and WKC have a high correlate of 0.82. We looked at WKC and F&P and saw a 0.67. But as you see highlighted on the screen, what was staggering and what was pretty interesting for all of us, including reading specialist principals and psychs, the people who were part of that work with Scott Peters, was that the F&P and the MAP had a pretty strong correlation, strong in the sense almost perfect at 0.90. And as many of us would probably better understand, as we get into the 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade levels, it's very strong. When you break it down in K2, if you just look at that particular subgroup, 0.77. And as we know with kindergarten being, it's that early literacy MAP screener, and so many of these kids are still learning how to use digital assessments, the 0.55. But this helped us really understand that we can use MAP as our screening tool, and know that if we reposition F&P as the way it's intended, as a formative assessment to help our teachers make really good decisions when they need to make those decisions with kids, we would be safe in doing that. So in terms of changes, I wanted you to see the why and the work that we did behind the scenes this year. And then what you're going to see coming forward is what your reading specialists and principals will share with you. It's going to be summary changes that we're going to make next year based on the work we did analyzing our data and also creating purpose behind each of these assessments. So just to kind of take you quickly through this one by one, in MAP next year, it's going to be pretty status quo. The only change that we're going to make, knowing that feedback from our 5K teachers and knowing that we're talking about little kids coming in, and for some of them, the first time taking a digital assessment, we're going to move the 5K window back in MAP to October. So October 5th through the 16th, it'll give our 5K students a month to work with teachers to better understand how to take a digital assessment. But for the rest of our students and our grade levels, that MAP assessment is still going to happen 3 times a year during those predetermined windows. What's going to be the most significant change next year is in F&P, where in the fall, F&P will not be given to all students during that predetermined assessment window. Rather, what's going to happen is F&P will just be given to students new to OASD in the fall, or any student that a teacher feels like they're going to need more information on to confirm an intervention recommendation from the previous spring. What we are intending and what principals and reading specialists are prepared to help you with is that this spring we are going to use our spring MAP and our spring F&P data to set fall intervention groups. And so from that information, you will sit down most likely late May, early June in your teams, and you are going to determine based on student performance who is in need of those interventions. We're going to get to in just a little bit what that will specifically look like. But just for the purpose of that, please know the 5K, though, again, 5K in the fall of next year will continue to wait until most likely December, but the F&P will be delivered as it traditionally has been. One of the questions that we know will come up is that a teacher will say, if we take away F&P in the fall, what am I going to do for SLOs? Because I've really appreciated using that information, and we want people to know you are still more than welcome to use F&P data for SLO purposes. You are more than welcome to choose a subgroup and to deliver that assessment. But again, you're going to see and hear from your reading specialists, we really want F&P to be positioned as it is intended, as a formative assessment tool to be used as teachers need it, rather than in these predetermined windows as a benchmark screener. In the winter, we're going to deliver F&P just to students who fell below the 24th percentile in MAP in the fall, who have been in that fall intervention, and we want to monitor growth. We also can deliver F&P in the winter to any student who a teacher is concerned about heading into the spring. And then in the spring, that will be a continued window where all students 5K through 4 will have an F&P delivered during a predetermined window. But we are going to do, when you look at this calendar, is we're going to expand the window to allow more flexibility. So it's going to start in mid-April rather than mid-May when we're all feeling that intense crunch. Again, I recognize this is a high-level overview. Your reading specialists and principals and common planning will be able to deliver a much more detailed description and be able to answer all of those questions. But what you'll note in the communication that will come out will be purpose of each of the assessments, how we want to define it as a district. You're also going to see a place where there's a ton of frequently asked questions and responses to those from the CNI office. Again, also built with reading specialists and principals. And then what I want to just quickly highlight is what that's going to look like in form next year. So you're going to see a chart that's going to show windows that we have for both MAP, PALS, and F&P. You're going to notice again that there are intervention windows that are locked in next year for all 5 elementary sites. And so one of the other changes that we're going to make that I think will help us all tremendously is that we have 2 rounds of intervention that will be established. One formally beginning October 5th, running through December 10th. The second formally beginning February 1st through May 12th. But we're going to do, knowing that we're going to set these groups in the spring, and we have so many kids who come into the school year needing to get going in intervention, is we're going to run these interim or booster intervention sessions. So the first one will start September 8th and run until October 2nd. That way it allows teachers to establish these groups that can get going. And it also allows teachers, if there are kids who move into the district or kids who are showing differently than we saw them in the spring, we can officially put them into intervention starting October 4th, but we have some time to make those decisions. The other major change that's going to happen is that we are going to try to create some equality or equity across the 5 sites. And knowing that a number of sites receive title funding, that title funding has typically afforded those sites the ability to hire a number of interventionists, where if you are not a title site, you're often left with just reading specialists and teachers to do all of that work. So what we're going to do is we're budgeting one reading and one math interventionist at each building. That will be outside of title funding. So right now, Meadowview and Summit, based on enrollment, will have a 4.5-hour reading and a 4.5-hour math interventionist. Greenland and Park Lawn will have both a 4-hour reading and a 4-hour math interventionist. And Ixonia will have a 3-hour reading and a 3-hour math interventionist, again, all based on enrollment. But it allows all of our sites to be able to have a consistent staff member in reading and in math, or could be used flexibly to help support our students during those intervention periods. Our principals and reading specialists have also been working and will continue to work with building leadership teams to create schedule next year that will include an intervention block, a time for us to be able to all work together to meet the needs of our students. All of that will be detailed in our communication coming next week. Again, I want to just continue to state that all of us, reading specialists, principals, teaching and learning leaders, recognize the amazing work that our teachers are doing on behalf of our kids. It's definitely been stressful over the last couple of years with all of the state mandated assessment. We need, as a district, to be able to think through this effectively and to be able to create a plan that does create efficiencies for our teachers and students, getting us the data that we need, but also allowing us to use instructional time and to maximize that to the best of our ability, and to trust our teachers to make really good decisions. So with that being said, I wish you all a great week. I thank you for the time you spent taking a look at this screencast. And as always, if you have any questions, never hesitate to contact me personally. I'd be happy to answer them. But all the best as you finish the school year. Thanks.